So I thought this was interesting. This is on CBR.com, and it's Future Avengers. What is Marvel's Disney Plus anime? So this is a really interesting article. It's by article, but it's by Carter Burrows. And again, you can find this on CBR.com. They usually do a lot of, you know, uh, over the years, they've done a lot of really interesting reporting, obviously on genre stuff when it comes to comics, but they've been getting more and more into just different forms of media. Obviously, as you know, the movies and the TV shows have taken a stronger uh, a stronger presence. So it says the way that anime comes to the United States is pretty simple. When a manga gains traction in Japan and then gets adapted to an anime or anime, if it finds enough success, it's brought over to the United States. While the internet has sped up this process to a point where the shows, more often than not, come to the United States, Europe and Japan. I am totally butchering this. Let me start over. The way that anime comes to the United States is pretty simple. When a manga gains traction in Japan and then gets adapted into an anime, and then gets adapted into an anime if it finds enough success, it's brought over to the United States. While the internet has sped up this process to a point where shows more often than not come to the United States, Europe and Japan all at the same time. Anime and manga are both traditionally Japanese in origin. This formula, however, was turned on its head back in 2017. Marvel announced that their new show, Future Avengers, would be an anime aired in Japan only. Now, 3 years later, the show will be making its American debut on Disney Plus. So this is kind of interesting. I apologize for butchering that, but you can read the story on CBR.com. I encourage you to do that. It's just very interesting. This is not, in my mind, the first time that Marvel has had manga or anime inspired productions. I think about like the Blade one they did several years ago. There was a couple of X-Men ones they did. I remember there was an Iron Man and a Hulk, and an Iron Man and Black Widow. They've done quite a bit of this over the years. Now, a lot of that content is older. I think it might have been like under that Lionsgate license they had years ago, because Lionsgate was doing a lot of Marvel direct to anime stuff. Like they did Ultimate Avengers 2. They did the Doctor Strange, Iron Man, Young Avengers. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they were producing back then. And at that time, it seemed like DC and Marvel were kind of doing kind of similar things. They were just basically rolling their content out, partnering with a studio, and getting a lot of stuff out there, at least in animated form, even if they couldn't get them actually produced live action. So it's not the first time that Marvel's done this, but it's interesting because apparently Future Avengers was a Japanese initial, show. It was designed for that audience and aired there, but now we're going to be able to get the chance to actually, if those of us like myself who haven't seen it, we're going to be able to see it actually on Disney Plus. I thought this was interesting because I wonder, I've talked about this before, how I feel like that there's a lot of sometimes missed opportunities by taking fun things and then, having them be just like a movie of the week or mini series, type event. DC has tons of this stuff because they've been doing these animated productions for years. So I think this is kind of interesting and fun. Had you? Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I totally even missed this show was even being created, even airing in Japan. Did you know about this show at all, Future Avengers?
No, I did not. I had no idea that they were doing something like this in Japan.
It's really interesting, and I do think that this is probably not the last time we'll see this with the popularity of Marvel, like all over the world. And I'm curious to see whether productions might actually start in other countries, not just this one in Japan. But I'm wondering if we might eventually see other animated productions, starting, like somewhere like in France or the Middle East. There was that Spider-Man they tried to do years ago, that Indian or Indonesian-based Spider-Man comic they did many years ago.
Oh, really? I wasn't familiar with that.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see what other interesting takes on characters, and I felt like that kind of idea kind of plays into, like, one of our things we'll be talking about later in the show. taking a different spin on a popular character and doing something radically different with it. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. So those of us that have our Disney Plus subscription still and have been waiting for something interesting to watch beyond the Jeff Goldblum show, and hopefully the Mandalorian will return soon. Um, once you're done, watching, Rocketeer for the fifth or sixth time, and Disney's The Black Hole and Captain Outer Space, you'll be able to check out hopefully this Future Avengers cartoon soon. I'll check it out. I've enjoyed a lot of the different stuff Marvel's done over the years with their animated productions, primarily the stuff that's aired on television. There was, I think it was Mighty Avengers. That one was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one. So there's been quite a few of them that have been a lot of fun. Hopefully this will be something fun for us to look forward to.
Yeah, it kind of gives me hope that maybe one of these days we'll actually see that Japanese Spider-Man live action show. I would love to see that. And in fact, that also kind of ties into there's been rumors that might actually happen in the next Spider-Verse movie. So I'll keep an eye on that too, because that would be kind of cool if they ever did bring back, because it's a totally different take on Spider-Man, completely different take on Spider-Man.
And for those people who have not been watching them, there's these really great, like the Toys Who Made Us and Movies Who Made Us specials actually on Netflix. They're really, really interesting. The one on Power Rangers is actually worth watching because of, ironically enough, I didn't realize a very interesting Spider-Man connection. I might have talked about this on the show before, but that Japanese version of Spider-Man, because he had like a vehicle and a transforming robot, because he combined all these elements together with a superpowered character for the first time, in a weird way, the joining together, transforming robot kind of idea, some of this actually comes from that Japanese Spider-Man live action show. And it directly influenced the creation of Super Sentai, which eventually, when it came to the United States, became the Power Rangers. And I had no idea that Spider-Man's legacy and influence was so large that a lot of the giant combining robot stuff that I loved as a kid, a lot of it actually comes from Spider-Man. If it hadn't been for the live action Spider-Man show, I mean, we would have still probably gotten it in a different form, but it's actually because of the Spider-Man live action show from Japan that we get a lot of this fun stuff. So Spider-Man's legacy looms really large for those of us that are maybe not aware of it. So I definitely recommend the Toys That Made Us. If you haven't seen those on Netflix, they're totally worth watching. Every single one of them is terribly entertaining and fun, even the Barbie one. But the ones I found the most interesting, the ones that had the biggest surprises for me personally, the Power Ranger one was the big surprise, because I didn't realize that there was such a huge connection. I mean, you've got the Japanese Spider-Man show, and you've got Kamen Rider, and then kind of out of those and adding new elements, we eventually end up with Super Sentai and Power Rangers, but also a lot of the giant robot stuff that a lot of us are familiar with. It's interesting how Spider-Man had a hand in that. So I would love to see that reflected in the next one of these Spider-Man productions that Sony's working on, whether it's the next Spider-Verse animated film or one of the live action ones. I would love to see some of this stuff touched upon and expanded upon, because it's an interesting part of Spider-Man's legacy you just don't hear many people talk about.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.